Oh, I love traveling across eastern Arizona on Route 66. For most people traveling down I-40, this is the quote-unquote boring part of Arizona. There's nothing to see, they say. But when you're willing to take the time to pull over and look, there are trading posts, dinosaurs, petrified wood, old timber bridges that were part of the original Route 66, like this one. Look at this. It's definitely not the safest bridge in the world to walk across, but before the interstate, this is how you cross the desert on these timber bridges. And if you're lucky, you can still find some with their big red fire barrels still attached to the side. I love things like ghost roads and ghost towns and old abandoned buildings, especially on Route 66. And I'm stoked because right now my son and I are headed to something I've actually never seen before on the old route. It's a bit of an adventure. You gotta take some dirt roads to get there. The location's a bit obscure. That dirt road we just went down leads us to an old alignment of Route 66 that was cut off in the 50s, but dates all the way back to the earliest period of the route. I think this was paved in 1928 for the first time. You can still see that it is in fact paved, although it's crumbling into nothing over the decades. And big parts of it here have become private property. That's why you have to call the phone number on this gate, which London is doing right now. You gotta speak to someone and get a special pin for this lock here. Then you have access to this old part of the mother road. We're about to cruise down for at least a mile or two down this old 1920s alignment of Route 66. We're more than a mile away from I-40. There's really nobody out here. Nobody sees us. This is amazing. This is an adventure, and I'll explain all of this as soon as we get to our destination. My gosh, I can finally see it. You see that building up in the head in the distance? That is our destination, the legendary Painted Desert Trading Post. It's in a remote location, a stunningly beautiful location. It's like something out of a movie. Dude, I cannot believe I am finally standing out here. So this was old Route 66, and just beyond us, that is the Petrified Forest National Park, specifically the Painted Desert portion of it. So back in 1940, a local cattle rancher out here named Dutch Windsor decided to capitalize on all the cars basically coming past his doorstep and created the Painted Desert Trading Post. I mean, coming in from the east there, I didn't see any other old ruins or any other place you could have got gas, so this must have been a welcome sight out here in the middle of nowhere. You can imagine how this would be, seeing a light on anywhere if you were traveling at night. You were so close to the Painted Desert, which was such a big deal. I mean, natural attractions are still a big deal, and people still complain that the national parks are too crowded and all that kind of stuff. Well, more foreign visitors visit our national parks sometimes than American visitors these days anyways, but back in the day, it was all the rage to take a train out here or to do a car trip, and people wanted to see things like the Painted Desert. They wanted to see things like petrified wood. Maybe it's just because I've grown up in Southern California where there is quite a lot of desert. But almost everybody I grew up with, almost everybody I know is like, I don't like the desert. The desert's boring. But back in the day, the desert was romantic, it was exotic, and it was even more of an adventure, even driving out here on the main highway, which was Route 66, because it was a lot harder to get your car out here. You had to carry canvas bags full of water for your radiator, so finding a place where you could get rugs, sandwiches, groceries, jewelry, curios, and candy, that was a welcome sight. Okay, so Dutch Windsor had his trading post out here in 1940, and he had a good 10, 15-year run before they decided that this little section of Route 66 was a little too curvy, a little too windy, and for whatever reason, they changed the route and put it way over there, where basically where I-40 is now running, about a mile away. This was a spur-of-the-moment decision today, so the dates are still a little fuzzy in my head, but I believe after 1958, that's when the new alignment came, and old Dutch Windsor had to close up shop and move in to Holbrook because this was no longer the main thoroughfare. Nobody was coming through, nobody to buy those sandwiches and rugs. No more Gulf gasoline for sale, and so this became just a wreck, like an abandoned building, a beautiful setting, a beautiful thing, and generations of Route 66 researchers and photographers and fanatics have come out here, found their way out onto this private road, and come and taken amazing, stunning photos of the place. Now, I did my big Route 66 series. I didn't come out here because I heard that the road was washed out at the time. I heard that the building was a total wreck, but as you can see, the building is looking beautiful now, and that's because in 2018, a fella by the name of Roman Rich, look him up, a big-time Route 66 aficionado, heard about the plight of the Trading Post, got a whole group of supporters together, which is called the Route 66 Co-op, and all of these people came together to restore the Painted Desert Trading Post. Look, that's what it looked like back in 2017 when I couldn't make it out here, or I was told I couldn't, and I was in a hurry. I wish my name was on that list, but by 2018 when they were doing all this stuff, I was out on the road, I was doing other things. I'd already done my big Route 66 series, so my mind was on other things. I didn't find out about this until 2019 or 2020 or so. Then there was the pandemic. So this is the first time I'm getting out here, and this is beautiful. Look at all the history here. They did such a great job documenting not just, you know, the old history and what this place is all about. An old Dodge Windsor right there. Look at that guy. Look at that guy. But also just how much the building had deteriorated, what they had to do to shore it up, how they had to rebuild it. And that's why all the kerfuffle with the gates, because I don't know if you noticed, there's already bullet holes on the outside of this building. It's way out in the middle of nowhere. There's no way you're going to get a caretaker or somebody to move in here. But of course, you don't want this place falling back into disrepair, getting vandalized, or spray painted on. Not after all that hard work. So you look up Painted Desert Trading Post. There's a lot of information online on how to find it, but you basically exit I-40 on Pinta Road. You have to get to that gate right there. You call the phone number, or phone numbers on the gate. Roman Rich will answer. He actually answers the phone himself. And then you enter the PIN that he gives you into the lock. Sometimes you have to send a photo ID, text a photo ID to him. There is service out there, weirdly enough. They will digitally unlock that padlock like you saw. You come in the gate, lock it behind you, and then if the same PIN doesn't work on your way out, you call and get a new one. Look at this. This is amazing. I can see lots of new wood, obviously. The place was falling apart. But I can also see lots of old, weathered, recycled wood in here as well. Look at this. There are some original portions, or appearing to be original portions, of the building. Okay, this is amazing. I want to know everything. I want to know more. And over here, luckily, there's this handy folder. Not only are there artifacts here, but look at this. There's this handy little book, basically with all the history, all the information, old photos. Dude, you can see just how much the building improved over each one of the work sessions. Dude, this book in here goes into so much detail about, you know, how the beams were put in here and what kind of wood and what they did for the foundation and which parts are original wood and which parts were replaced and who did what. And there's so many little historic artifacts. I have to imagine most of these were found in the surrounding area right here as they leveled out the building and stuff. I think it's really neat that they've taken everything they could find and put it in here, whether that's old original paint pieces or some of these little shards of pottery, pot shards that they found, or pieces of old Coke bottles or Pepsi bottles. Look at this. That's amazing. Found these little pieces and then found a duplicate, like a full-size plate somewhere, so they could show you what the plates were like they were using out here. Now, nobody knows what happened to Dotch's first wife, but Joy Nevin married old Dotch, I think, or cohabitated with him. She'd later divorce him, move back east, but then she'd come back to Holbrook in 1970. There's a street named after her there now, and just became such an important part of the community. There's a whole thing about her in the big museum in Holbrook, which I filmed before. This is such a cool stop, you guys. I thought I'd be here for 5 or 10 minutes. I've ended up being here for, you know, an hour, and it's because this place is really enchanting, and as you can see, there's no glass in the windows because people are just going to come throw rocks through them, so that's probably for the best if you don't have anyone living here to protect it. And even the old doors have got cracks in them, and so you hear the wind whistling through the building, and there's so much eerie silence all around in the outside. You just hear the flag flapping in the breeze, the American flag, and the scenery is incredible, and it's just, this is cool. 10 out of 10. 12 out of 10, highly recommend a visit to the Painted Desert Trading Post. The amazing thing and the fun thing about Route 66 is that each stop like this could be a whole documentary. There's so many stories here, and there's so many incidents that happened just here, and then all the restoration, all the people who helped with the restoration, the stories Dutch Windsor's kids and grandkids could tell about this place. There's so much to cover at each stop. We can only just dip the toe in as we travel Route 66, but that's what makes it so amazing and what keeps me coming back over and over again, and why it was so important for me to bring my son out here on this trip. Funny because there was information in there about the sleeping porch, and you can see over here this door says Windsor, and probably led to sort of the personal quarters inside, perhaps, I don't know. But just across the wash down there, I can see an old house. Which makes me wonder who lived there over here on the edge of the Petrified Forest National Park area. And you have to cross an old Route 66 bridge to get there. And I'm just thinking, it's amazing that this used to be the main thoroughfare from Chicago to Los Angeles and across this part of Arizona. This was a busy, bustling highway, and now it's just so beautiful, so silent, so romantic, you know. It's interesting. Wow, dude, there are more than a few wrecks right here. Was this car towing this car? Tumbled into the wash? Man, this is cool. If you come out to the Trading Post, make sure you come down and check out the bridge. I mean, that's amazing. You don't see that every day. Dude, for real, why are there so many wrecks down here? Man, maybe the Route 66 co-op could tow them up and set them up there somewhere or something. Dude, where'd these come from? Anybody know? Let me know. Just makes me wonder, will anyone feel like I-40 is romantic if it's ever abandoned? Will there ever be future generations pining for the old lost days of the interstate? I don't know. Speaking of the interstate, it's time for us to head back down this road and get back on it, because it's time for us to leave Arizona and head to a state London's never been to before. We're going to New Mexico. This last stretch of I-40 going into New Mexico crosses into the boundaries of the Navajo Nation. So you see the landscape change, you see the culture change around you. There's a few cool places to stop, some we've stopped at before, but I'm saving all my energies for what's at the border. All right, this is it, the big terrain change. When you see the cliffs like this, that's how you know your Arizona trip is over and your New Mexico journey is about to begin. It's very windy out here. I don't know if I bring it with me or what. It's always windy. Every time I come, it seems like it's windy. Look at these cliffs and look at the stuff up there. You got big old bears and eagles and elk and deer. This is a famous stop because there's a rest stop over here, like a rest area, an official highway rest area. It's the last town in Arizona, Lupton or Lepton. I've never known how the official pronunciation is. And at this town, or I should say all over the side of the road here, you'll see all these trading posts, and the majority of them are owned by different members of the same family, the Yellowhorse family. All of them are cool, all of them are worth stopping into. They're all in Arizona right here. But my favorite, and for my money the best, is the granddaddy of them all, the original, which most people miss because you gotta head east just a little bit down old Route 66, away from the off-ramp here, the Chief Yellowhorse Trading Post. You'll think you're going too far, but you'll know you're on the right track when you pass this truck stop and you see this. Now, this is a very famous part of Route 66 history and one of my favorite spots. I love Scott Yellowhorse, who runs this place, but I haven't been here when it's been open since before the pandemic. It's been years. Now, Scott, like many of the other people in this town, is a descendant, the son of Juan Yellowhorse, who built the trading post we're about to see in the 1960s. But he built this on the site of an even older trading post, which was right here in this fort that you could see kind of decaying away, that was set up by a guy named Harry Indian Miller. Now, Harry Indian Miller wasn't an Indian at all. He was a European fella who ended up marrying a Filipino wife and had half Filipino children, but he always claimed to be an Apache chief. He's the guy that set up Two Guns, Arizona, and made up all the fake stories about the Apache death cave and all these other things to tell tourists, some of which people still believe today. And actually, when he was out at Two Guns, He ended up killing his landlord in a gun dispute, a pistol dispute, and then later desecrating his grave by throwing red paint on the headstone. He was a crazy character, old Harry Indian Miller. Well, anyway, long after his time, Chief Juan Yellowhorse took over this place. Juan Yellowhorse, of course, being an actual Native American, he's a Navajo. And the cool thing about this original Chief Yellowhorse Trading Post is that the state line between New Mexico and Arizona comes at this crazy angle through the property, and they've actually built the Chief Yellowhorse Trading Post over there right over the line. The line is actually painted on the floor. So if you're trying to do authentic Route 66 and you're coming from Chicago to LA, this is your first stop in Arizona. If you're coming the way I'm coming, west to east, this is your first stop in New Mexico. It's the only way to do it. Chief Yellowhorse. See, now when Harry Miller had this attraction, he called this the Cave of the Seven Devils. He built fake sort of Anasazi ruins out here. I guess we shouldn't say fake, we should say replicas. And he brought many of his animals from the old Two Guns Zoo, you know that famous picture, mountain lions, you know, Two Guns, Arizona. He brought some of his animals when he lost that place to live over here in this enclosure. And even back in the day, in the Chief Yellowhorse days, there was a live buffalo here, so it was like, see the live buffalo. They're really trying to get those tourists that were interested in old Western movies. And Juan Yellowhorse, Chief Yellowhorse, the father of the current proprietor here at Chief Yellowhorse, he was born in, I think, 1930, and it's cool because he was a U.S. Navy airman navigator from 1948 to 1958. Apparently he flew supply missions into West Berlin. Clearly a guy who loved both his cultures, Navajo and American, and his family are still here today, running the show in this town. It's just always been one of my favorite spots, both for the history, and I just love that it's so homespun. Look at that. You got the carved guy there, the cigar store guy, you got the totem pole, you got the wagon wheels. All right, we're going in. Oh, it's been a long time since I've been in here. There it is. Arizona on this side, New Mexico on that. It doesn't get more authentic than the actual border between states on old Route 66, London. I love it in here. There's so much rad stuff for sale, so many knickknacks, antiques, handmade jewelry. Look at all of this stuff. Look, and there's the chief right there. Juan Yellowhorse. I didn't know this wasn't even his first trading post because he used to sell stuff out of what's called the Navajo Castle, the old house that doesn't exist anymore, but it was down the road a ways, a little farther inside Arizona. As you can see, the chief was obviously a very creative guy. Get a copy of that. The great-grandfather, grandfather,
tourists from Chicago,
and then your dad. So they're all selling the petrified wood, different generations. That's at least 5 generations.
We've been doing it for 100 years now.
100 years of Yellowhorse business right here on Route 66. Look at all the stuff in here. I love that you can find anything. Old books. You guys added records, Scott. Yeah. I like that. Oh, Billy Idol. Look at that, London. I didn't think we'd find Billy Idol at Chief Yellowhorse, but I'm stoked that we have. Oh, yeah, petrified wood everywhere, little rocks. Look at all of this stuff, so cool. Hey, look, DVDs. London, look, Star Tours. Scott's got jewelry that he made in here. Look at these thumb rings. I gotta get one of these, but there's all these rings. What do you say, you're working on chains, you got turquoise stuff. There's so much stuff in here. Scott was a musician and an artist and a jewelry maker. And he's here running the Chief. So come see Scott Yellowhorse. Come get some sweet piece of Route 66 history. Come check out the Chief. And make sure, if you can, if the weather permits, you go out here into the yard. Okay, here we go, the yard. I love the yard because it's full of all kinds of artifacts, full of petrified wood that you could purchase. Please do come purchase some petrified wood from Chief Yellowhorse. But Scott actually corrected something I had always believed. I always believed the fort out there was built by Harry Miller because that's what I've always heard. But in fact, Harry Indian Miller's buildings were right over here, right in front of this fence line. And of course the, I don't know what else to call them, but simulated Pueblo buildings here. So just like at Two Guns, the sort of dry rock constructions. Harry Miller was crazy. So I was asking Scott, like, did Chief Yellowhorse, did he know Harry Miller? And of course, like, the grandpa and the great-grandpa, they were all out here. He said they did know Harry Miller. When they were little kids, they'd come over here, but Harry Miller would scare them because he didn't like kids. He didn't like little kids getting into the display cases and messing with stuff. So there's a lot of history here. You got to come out and ask for the history that's not in the book. So his buildings were right here, and he showed me a photograph inside that looked like this. And that's what the place looked like when Harry Miller was here, and he called this the Cave of the Seven Angels. Then later it became the Cave of the Seven Devils. He had all kinds of signs. See, Indian ruins. And I didn't know this, but he actually had the mountain lions out here. So the famous Two Guns mountain lions did actually move here to what is now Chief Yellowhorse. Look at this, you got the Navajo wishing well over here. Make a wish the Indian way. Always lucky, drop silver wampum. Other kind unlucky. So don't put a penny in there. I love this place so much because there's leftover stuff from Harry Miller's time, so you can see some of the posts and the line, the old fence posts from where his animals were caged up here, and where you could see the live buffalo later during Chief Yellowhorse's time. Last couple times I was here, Scott, who's way over there going near the cave, he kept rescuing all these res dogs, right? The dogs on the reservation, all the wild dogs, and getting their puppies, and he'd bring them here. It's because all the travelers come through here, and that way he could get them adopted. I go, you got any puppies? He goes, nah, we're not in the puppy business today. Scott popped back out. We were talking for a while. And some of the stuff, some of the iron stuff you see out here was brought here by Harry Miller. It's been here for a long time. And these are simulated Pueblo ruins. But here's the interesting part. This is for all the hucksterism and the hoaxterism and all the quote-unquote Indian ruins. Like, I'll show you some back in this cave. Look it up here. For all the fake stuff Harry Miller built, and you can see some of these old cliff dwellings there, and because he tampered with everything, do we know that they're super old? Do we think he built them? They were here during the Yellowhorse years too. But what Scott was just telling me is that there actually were, and probably are, real Anasazi, or as the Hopi and such would prefer, ancestral Puebloan ruins underneath this stuff. There's real archaeology underneath the sort of simulated archaeology, because when they ran a water line through the property, they found all kinds of ancestral Puebloan pottery, or as the Navajo call it, Anasazi pottery, and this is Navajo land, that's why I'm using that word at the moment. There's a whole display case of it inside. So there was a whole village underneath the sand we're standing on. Scott thinks there may be a kiva down here, there may be all kinds of archaeology, all located right in front of the Chief Yellowhorse Cave right here. That's its real name. Of course, Harry Miller would have had us calling it the Cave of the Seven Devils. The Hopi come out here every year and do a blessing because these were their ancestors that lived right under these ruins that were built later for tourists. There's real stuff right down there where the water line is. So you definitely look at the display case in there, check out the artifacts. I mean, how cool is that? The same people that built Chaco Canyon and places like that. And then you've got layers of history because you got the 19-teens and 20s and 30s. Harry Miller was doing his thing out in Walnut Canyon, and then later Two Guns, of course. Then he came out here after he had just barely been acquitted from shooting his landlord out there and desecrating his grave, brought his animals and everything, set this stuff up. Then you have Chief Yellowhorse, who came out here and set up his operation, set up some stuff for the tourists to check out, and his family had been selling stuff, obviously, all the way back to the great-great-grandfather. The Yellowhorse family, they had been trading the petrified wood back when the trains, when the railroads came through, so when the Harvey houses were built and stuff like that, and doing excursions. So it's a long line of history in that family, and then eventually they got this property, and you can see some of the remnants of that era, 1960s and 70s. Look at this. Look at this hand-painted sign about the wagons. It says, like, you know, old Navajo wagon used by us Navajos. Can't read the rest of it. It's broken. It's a little singed out here from a fire they had. But you see all these wagon parts. You see old car bumpers. Look at the old stoves. So some of them were Harry Miller's. He was saying some of them could have been Juan Yellowhorse's, the chiefs. But some of the stuff is pretty darn old. A lot of scrap metal here. Hope the price of scrap doesn't go up. I hope this is here for a long time. But how cool is that sign? So I love places like this because, you know, you might come in off the road, and if you didn't know the story, you walk around, you check it out. The stuff inside's pretty cool. You'd walk around here and not know what you're looking at, but it's incredible. You know, the buffalo lived right back here, but you can see all these red rocks. See all the red stuff? That's all fallen down even after the fire here. That's all fallen down from up there. So you probably don't want to keep your buffalo here anymore. But there are ponies on the property. They're only a couple of weeks old. There's horses on the property. Right now they're way down there by the fort. So he told me that fort, that wasn't Harry Miller. Harry Miller's stuff was up here. That fort was built by his uncle way back in the day when the Chief Yellowhorse Trading Post was established. So I've read the wrong thing and assumed the wrong thing for years. So see, that's why you gotta stop, you gotta ask, you gotta talk to everybody, get everybody's side of the story. And when he says it was his uncle that did it, and his uncle can still tell the story, well then I believe that history more than I believe the books. Look at, here's the state line on the back of the property. It's confusing where the state line is. Look at right up against the cliff is a survey marker, an official survey marker for the state line. See the flags right there? And then it runs all the way down through the Chief Yellowhorse Trading Post itself, and then down onto the road over there. Speaking of history in the past, I just realized I have an old slide from right along the road in front of Chief Yellowhorse, the old Welcome to New Mexico sign. There was a welcome on one side and a leaving New Mexico, welcome to Arizona on the other. From this area, so if you were coming east on Route 66, that's the sign you would have seen back in the day. I found it in an old collection of photographs. It's one of my treasures. That's one of my treasures, my precious. All right, I love places like this. I love the friends that I made on Route 66, love talking to Scott, love hearing old stories. And I really love that Chief Yellowhorse Trading Post has got the Native American jewelry, some of it made by Scott himself. It's got the Route 66 souvenirs, but more importantly, it's got all this random, cool, fun, old antique stuff, so you can find something for everyone, and they make it easy for you to help support the business and take something along with you. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for us for today. Now there's so much else to see on Route 66. There's so many cool little frontage roads and side roads that were part of the original route in New Mexico. It's one of my absolute favorite stretches. New Mexico used to be called the land of enchantment, and it's true. The more time you spend exploring it, the more you just are enchanted, you fall in love. See these old Route 66 hand-painted signs? So these were from back in the Chief's day. Scott found a pile of these buried under old barnwood, and he gave me one. So that's why I feel like indebted to Scott for all time. You know, we've been friends ever since. And it's great to catch up after years of this place being closed. But these are old original ones. Look at that old original outhouse and the fort. But anyway, I got sidetracked again. See, look, I got enchanted by the outhouse. You've seen the weather's kind of crazy. So the weather's kind of crazy between here and Gallup and Albuquerque. And we're still trying to push east as far as we can at the moment. Because keep in mind, we've got to come back through all this portion of Route 66 to get to our home in Southern California. So today, luckily, the weather held out just perfectly for us to explore two epic, incredible, legendary, historic sites on Route 66. We came to see the chief, as the old sign says. Now it's time for us to head on down the road. So Painted Desert Trading Post, if you're just inside of Arizona and right on the New Mexico-Arizona border, you saw it going right through the business, Chief Yellowhorse 3, the original Chief Yellowhorse Trading Post right here at the Chief Yellowhorse Cave on America's Mother Road, a historic Route 66 landmark, a legendary place to stop. Say hi to Scott for me. Visit the last of my little hand-painted Route 66 signs on the route, which is behind the counter. He'll show it to you. Remember, my new book, Tales from Random Land, is available only at randomland.com, well, and Kindle. And also at randomland.com, you can find links for the sick hats, for some of our Route 66 t-shirts, for Patreon. Do all the things, my friends. Check it out. Thank you for watching till the very end. You've done your duty. Go home and sleep well. See you next time. It's so little, and then he's still got his umbilical cord hanging off his belly. Look how fast he ran to his mama. Remember my new book, Tales from Rand. Remember my new remember my blue book. I mean,
So people can see.
I like this. It's true. It's true. This is so funny. Look, there's this lizard just hiding from London, just peeking at him around this board. I don't know why that's funny. It just is.